Theresa May will head off around Europe tomorrow to try to get a further Brexit extension. She'll meet Angela Merkel in Berlin and Emmanuel Macron in Paris, ahead of the emergency EU summit in Brussels on Wednesday. She spent today in talks with cabinet ministers and senior Tory backbenchers. There were no cross-party talks with Labour. They resume between officials tonight. But Jeremy Corbyn said he still doesn't know what concessions the Prime Minister is prepared to make. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me. What's going on? Why is she going to Europe?
I've been told that one of the Labour sources are saying that we shouldn't get overexcited about these talks that are happening this evening. They are talks to talk about talks.
Jeremy Corbyn is still in contact with the government over Theresa May's attempt to win Labour support for her Brexit divorce deal. But 2 days to the EU summit, he's not sounding like someone about to shake on a deal.
The problem is that the government doesn't seem to be moving off the original red lines.
In Dublin, the Taoiseach was hosting the EU's Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier. Leo Varadkar didn't sound like he expected Theresa May to come to Wednesday's special European Council summit, having signed off a deal with Labour.
We're open to extending the deadline to allow time for these discussions to run their course and come to a conclusion.
In our system, that is very, very difficult. For Theresa May to open talks with someone like Jeremy Corbyn is not at all easy, but she is doing that because she is totally and utterly determined to deliver Brexit for the British people.
Jeremy Hunt's message to EU foreign ministers meeting in Luxembourg: cross-party consensus seeking is difficult stuff and quite alien to British politics.
Well, I can speak now with Mary LouMcDonald, the president of Sinn Féin, who's been in London today meeting with various opposition parties, and you've just come out of a meeting with Jeremy Corbyn, haven't you?
That's right.
I mean, did you get any sense from him that there is any likelihood of agreement with the government?
Well, I certainly got a sense from him that he understands, from an Irish perspective, the need to protect the Good Friday Agreement and the All-Ireland economy and so on. Obviously, they're resuming talks this evening, so I didn't ask for any guarantees of certainty because we're well past that. I think we know at this stage that the Brexit process has been marked by a mixture of chaos and indecision. So from my perspective, what we need at this stage is we need to land at a position of certainty and clarity.
Now, the Labour Party is pushing the idea of a customs union, obviously, but does that do it for you?
Well, it answers the Irish question in part, but not in full. The issue for the island of Ireland has been, yes, the customs union, but also alignment with the single market. And I just have to emphasise that we're against Brexit. There's no good Brexit for Ireland. There's no happy ever after to this story. But the backstop, the infamous backstop, represents the bottom line. It's the least worst option.
So you have to have alignment with the rules of the single market.
A whole process of painstakingly considering other options that were put on the table has been gone through and concluded. And where we have landed, and where the British government, let's remember, landed, was agreement on the contents of the backstop as the bare minimum and the bottom line.
So from your point of view, the deal is the right thing to do if you want to deliver Brexit?
Well,
is there anything better than the deal?
Well, the only better thing is for no Brexit. We didn't want Brexit. Brexit is an invention of the Tories here. It certainly wasn't an Irish construct. An opinion right across our island, including in the north of Ireland, where people, remember, voted to remain. Nobody wants Brexit. Brexit is bad news for us, even with the withdrawal agreement, even with the protections of the backstop. It will still inflict damage on the island of Ireland.
If somehow, through some miracle, agreement happens and Brexit goes ahead, where does that leave Sinn Féin's primary goal, which is United Ireland?
Well, the island is partitioned since the 1920s. It's a mark of the colonial retreat from our country. The border has divided our country. We've had conflict. And we now happily have a Good Friday Agreement, which gives us the democratic means and institutions to mediate that dispute and ultimately to remove the border. And I believe that's the direction that we're headed in.
There's no doubt in your mind that in the minds of people in Northern Ireland, if Brexit goes ahead, it pushes them logically towards voting for a united Ireland if that question is put to them.
Well, of
So
course.
it's good for your cause, is what I'm saying.
Well, Brexit's not good for anyone. So we don't have a scorched earth policy as regards Irish unity. I don't take a simple view that the end justifies the means. Brexit is very dangerous. Brexit is very disruptive. Brexit is in open contradiction to the commitments of the Good Friday Agreement. But what I do know is this, is that because of the Brexit debacle, many people who may have been quite, lukewarm on the issue of partition and Irish unity are now looking at it through a different lens.
Mary LouMcDonald, thank you very much
Thank
indeed
you.
for joining us as well. Joining me now is the Labour MP, Angela Eagle. Are you at all clear what Jeremy Corbyn is trying to achieve?
Well, I think Jeremy and his negotiating team are trying to listen to what Theresa May is saying. She decided to pivot to the Labour Party and do something that she should have done 2 years ago at the start of this whole process and try to find some kind of consensus to build a proper majority for what she wanted to do in the country and in Parliament. Better late than never. And so at the moment, my understanding is that those talks, she still hasn't left her red line. So
Again, didn't mention the idea of a people's vote or second referendum tonight in his statement. Does that concern you?
Well, look, I think that we have to wait to see where we get, but it's quite clear that going back for a confirmatory referendum could well form a part of this process so that we can have closure in a process that has divided the country, and there's still no sign, as you can hear it out there with the sing-off, there's absolutely no sign of the country coming back together. And having a confirmatory referendum to say this is the best deal that we could come up with, what do you think? Because it's very different to what you were told Brexit would be like in the referendum. There's nothing anti-democratic about that. I think the important thing is always with any democratic process that it's important that there's a democratic process. You can't be against democracy if you think you're going to lose out in this particular round. We are a democracy and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having democratic elections. I mean, the important thing is that this government have messed up for 2 years now, this entire process. They've got to the very end. Mrs May has spent 5 months trying to browbeat Parliament into agreeing her deal. She can't even get her own side to agree her deal. And in the end, right at the very end, when she should have done it at the beginning, she's finally turned to try to build a consensus. About time, but she's left it a bit late.
Angela Eagle, thank you very much.